Hello, I am Alfredo Behrens, and we will discuss here the negotiations during M&As. I will focus mostly on mining industries because they are so large that they attract a lot of curiosity and therefore there is a lot of information about them. But I will only use the mining industries as examples of what may happen in a negotiation during an M&A. First of all, why would anyone want to get into an M&A? Well, there are two reasons for it. One is because people want to grow, and second is because they want their companies to be more profitable. Regarding growth, it can be organic, that is, by reinvesting the proceeds of your sales, but that is somewhat slow, and some people are a bit more impatient, and they want to grow by acquiring other firms. Other firms that may bring not only size, but also perhaps a higher profitability than your own company. And regarding profitability, well, it's nice. This is the reason why most of companies are started. So why not seek to move ahead and buy another company that will make you more profitable, not only because that company may be more profitable than yourself, but because together you may gain synergies and other advantages that we will discuss straight away. So what's this business of synergy? Why would I want to do an M&A and join forces with another company just to create synergy? Well, you've probably noticed how there are many companies competing against each other to get into a target airport at the same time. 7 o'clock in the morning because people want to get there to work. Well, of course, yes, competition is good, but sometimes it means that you could benefit by managing the load more accurately. Benefiting not only yourself, but also your customers, is giving them a choice. Some people may want to leave at 6 o'clock in the morning, or arrive at 7, or arrive at 8, or arrive at 9. But if they have no choice, they're not as well off. So there are synergies, yes, but also synergies in cutting costs or taking advantage of seasonalities. There are many reasons why two companies folding into each other might take advantage of significant synergies. Then there are taxing advantages. Yes, of course, because if you hold a lot of cash because you've done well and you distribute that cash in terms of dividends, then the shareholders may have to pay taxes on it. On the other hand, if you reinvest or acquire a larger company or a competitor or a complementary industry, the shares of your company will increase in value and your shareholders will benefit. Of course, they might sell their shares at a higher price if all goes well. And of course, there are opportunities, right? Their company's not doing well. You realize, you think, oh, I've got the money, I'll buy it. Yes, those are bargains. They happen as well with companies. And then there is the agency issue. Well, there may be a diversity of behavior or expectations between what the shareholders want to do and what their agents want to do on their behalf. Not necessarily something which is against the law, but it might mean that managers take the idea that it's important to engage in an M&A against some of the shareholders' wishes. I was referring to the agency issue, that managers may have a diverse viewpoint on whether to engage in an M&A or not. When might that happen? Well, just imagine that you're a manager and that you're running a company that's doing well, but you may be the target of somebody else that wants to buy you and you might lose your job. So one possibility is that you go out and acquire another company that is not in the interest of the one that is threatening you. So the one that was threatening and taking over might think, well, it was a good bargain when that company was alone, but now that they have bundled with somebody else, it's not as interesting. So you may do it more in your favor than necessarily in taking into account the benefits of your shareholders. It should not happen, but occasionally it does. And then there is the unsystematic risk. Now, this is a bit more complicated, and I will illustrate it with the case of one very large mining company in Brazil. Take the case of Vale, a very large mining company with headquarters in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. In 2005, this company had lots of mines, but they're not that nicely placed in the sense they were in the hinterland of the country, which meant that to get to the ports and export them mostly to China, they had to take that iron ore in very long distances. I mean, over 1,000 kilometers to the ports. Now, that's nice. But not only it's costly, but it also means that a very long railway may be subject to stoppages. Say, for example, what about if the natives in the area decided to block the railway and ask for some benefits? It had happened. And what about if Brazil has a mining strike or perhaps a harbor strike? Aha! You see, so there are many risks associated not only with the operation itself, but also with the country. So Vale was a company that had essentially one very important ore to export, that was iron, but it was located in Brazil and it was subject to some risks that, lenders might not want to face. And why would you need the money? Because if you want to expand, open new mines and acquire others, then you need credit. And credit, when it's risky, it might come at a premium that you may not want to pay. So in order for Vale to acquire other companies and expand its own operations, it needed cheap credit and it had to diversify. Not only iron ore and not only Brazil. And this is why Vale significant share of Inco. That was a company that was focused on nickel, and it had operations in New Caledonia in the Pacific and in Canada, besides some in Indonesia as well. But you see, what happens is that by acquiring Inco, Vale ceased to be a one-ore company and a one-country company, and therefore by diversifying and lowering its risk from exposure only to Brazil, Vale became more attractive for cheap credit. Well, so many M&As failed that you may wonder why is it that they bother carrying them out? Well, it's growth and profitability, of course, as we saw earlier. But, they try to get it right. But which are the risks? Well, the most common ones are, of course, I've just mentioned it. One is price volatility. You buy the company and then the price of the product oscillates so much that you may wonder, well, was it worth it? Huh? Sometimes, you made the wrong guess. And the negotiation of the price of the company that you're acquiring. There's so many issues related to that. How much is that company worth? How will I pay for that? How much will I have to compensate the managers to agree or the shareholders to agree? All these are subjects of very intense and significant negotiations, and we will discuss one case of an important mining company, BHP Billington, trying to acquire Rio Tinto. But then there are other issues. For example, you plan to acquire that company. Yes, and it was interesting, but you failed to realize that that company had such a diverse culture, organizational culture from yours, that it might be more difficult than what you had envisaged to make them work together. And perhaps you were too overconfident. Perhaps you thought that you had all the resources to make it right, whatever happens. But the fact was that you underestimated the capacity of your staff, which was already quite stretched out and could not manage the time or the effort to put things together. See, so there are very many risks that can materialize and that usually lead for M&As to fail. I mentioned the case of the merger between BHP Billington and Rio Tinto, very large Australian-based mining companies competing with Vale, of course. But the idea is, they were so large that when they attempted the merger, they attracted a lot of attention. Deservedly so. The companies were so large and, moreover, based almost in the same country, which meant that there was a lot of synergy to be extracted from them operating together. Actually, it was a substantial amount, and that is what needed to be split between one and the other. BHP Billington was larger than Rio Tinto. So how would they split that difference? Well, of course, if they did it in the way that Mary and John were considering when they decided their mega rave, then perhaps they should split the benefit, the yearly benefit, the stream of benefits per year over a long time, according to their initial ratio of forces. If, on the other hand, they decided to split it half and half, well, that would be a bit more beneficial to Rio Tinto, which was smaller. And the gain of one may be the loss of the other. Except that, of course, if there is no collaboration, they will not realize that stream. So there was an important, very significant incentive for them to collaborate, and therefore for that merger to go through. But of course, there was a lot of friction. Yes, there was so much friction that it took a long time. Eventually, Rio Tinto acquiesced and accepted a substantial amount upfront against a share of the resulting company. Everything was fine and everybody was smiling, almost toasting champagne, until they realized that the European Union would not agree to the merger, and it fell through. So the merger died on the fifth and last stage of all mergers. But it's something that you have to deal with. Well, there's far more than we can cover in a video of this length, but you will find it in the PowerPoint that I prepared, in the readings, in the videos that accompany this one. But what I want you to remember is that, yes, M&As are a very substantial way of growth for a corporation. This is why they do it, despite all the risks. And the risk can be many. They can be external. They can be simply underestimating the risks of the volatility of the product that they are engaged in, or perhaps underestimating the capacity of their own staff to pull it through, or they may have underestimated the difference in organizational culture. Listen, there's no end to it. But the fact is that the enticement to carry out a merger and acquisition is so significant that they are willing to put all the effort into the difficulties of evaluating the company that is being targeted, on the mode of acquisition, on the way that they are going to pay for it, and eventually they try. Even when everything seems that it's okay, it may be blocked by a regulatory agency. But those are facts of life. We will get together in intuition and thrash things out.